Hello, YouTubers, and welcome back to another episode of The Grandstand here on the Ohio Patriot Education Network YouTube channel. I'm, as always, your host, AR, the Ohio Patriot. And for today's episode, we're going to discuss a recent interaction that happened on the Whatever podcast. I believe it was last night. And go over that a little bit because there was an anti 2A chick on there. Or I don't know if she's really telling anti 2A per se. She was more or less, she wasn't quite like Mom's Demand Action level, like anti-gun, piece of shit, basically. But she was very much hesitant of, oh, somebody shouldn't have multiple firearms in the home. They should only have a gun kind of thing. Like she's one of these people, honestly. Um, which really tells me she's very ignorant to a ownership in this country is what it is. And probably most likely herself has never had a gun in her life is my guess, honestly. And I'm going to try to be very respectful in this episode. I'm going to try to, keep the language to a minimum is what it is. Obviously, I, did use it already a little bit here, but it's whatever. The entire point I do want to make, though, is as we're going to get into a whole thing of my own backstory, my own gun ownership in this country is what it is, my own, fight for the Second Amendment and being an activist and advocate of constitutionalists, etc. here. So first and foremost, basically, my little, we're going to go into my backstory here is what it is. We're gonna do like what they like to do on whatever podcast. So obviously the A in my name stands for Adam. That's who I am. In 2019, sorry, go back a little further than that. So basically, been a 2A, pro 2A guy my entire life, even as a kid and stuff like that. Always had a fascination with guns. Is what it was. Basically it was when I was a small child. I believe I was about 7 or 8 years old, give or take. The family and I had gone on to a road trip to the Henry Ford Museum over there in Michigan, and they had this cool antique wall of guns there, and it was basically all the guns that Henry Ford owned at the time, or whatever the case be, and throughout his life is what it was. And it was basically just a lot of old like cowboy stuff and whatnot. But yeah, it was a fascinating experience for me, and it was one of the first times that I had the actual firsthand experience to go out there and see. Oh, hey, here's a bunch of guns, basically. And at the end of the day, just like that Andrew Wilson guy said in the podcast last night, it's an inanimate object. Unless you have somebody physically pulling a trigger, there's nothing going to happen there is what it is. And that's one of the things he got into with this chick about, actually, was that she was acting like it's just going to go off in an argument or whatever the case be. It's like, yeah, unless you have your finger on a trigger or something, lady, like, you're not going to pop off around at somebody. Nobody's going to pop around at you is what it is there. So I do want to point that out real quick. Going back to my story, obviously, though. So yeah, basically, 7, 8 years old, saw a ball of guns for the first time, thought it was cool. And then, always sort of, growing up, we watched Bonanza and stuff like that is what it was. And, obviously there's a lot of 2A use in that with like cowboy guns. And that's another thing too, by the way. Originally it was all cowboy stuff is what it was there. That I was into initially as a kid is what it was. And then it wasn't until, my teens and my 20s and stuff like that I started becoming more interested in actual firearms. Now, granted, during this entire time, being as poor as I was growing up and stuff like that, never put enough money together to actually buy a gun in this country, mostly because of the fact you had assholes like Obama and other Democrats like Bill Clinton, etc. there, pushing forth legislation that essentially made gun ownership go higher and higher and higher when it came to the price to actually become a gun owner in this country. And it's something like people like Coley Noir bring out quite a bit is what it is, dude. And if you look at the actual statistics of gun control in this country, it's all racial based, dude. It's all discriminatory. It's all racist. It's all classist, etc. Like the two people that got hit the most with restrictions on gun ownership in this country were based on race and based on classism. And it was either you were super poor or you were a minority in this country, usually. It's where if you go back in history of the Jim Crow laws and stuff like that in our nation, you see it all throughout that. Ironically enough, it's all Democrat-created crap, by the way. And it's, Democrats to this day that are still trying to keep it in place what it is in many cases. It's like, well, you can look at North Carolina here in the last couple of years, which, by the way, I want to point something out right now. Congratulations to our endorsed candidate, 2A man himself there, Mark Robinson, who is the lieutenant governor of North Carolina right now and won the GOP primary last night. So congratulations, Mark. Hopefully you become the next governor of North Carolina and succeed that piece of shit Roy Cooper to finally have a good 2A leadership team in there. And you can actually finally become the 29th or 30th state now that would be a constitutional carry state in this country. So, which we're not sure what's going to happen right now with Louisiana. That's why I said 29th or 30th is what it is then, because technically it would be, the other one would be the 30th then. So anyway. So basically, you have, going back to my story, obviously, like I said, growing up as a kid, watched Bonanza a lot, watched Little House on the Prairie a lot, And now, granted, there wasn't as much gun use in Little House and stuff like that, but there was some here and there is what it was. Again, it was all cowboy stuff, is what it was at the time. And, when you're growing up in that time period of like reruns in the early 90s and stuff like that, and it's like, a lot of old school cowboy stuff and whatnot, you start to lean towards that is what it is. And then eventually, you start, and like I said, when I got my teens and my 20s and stuff like that, I started to become, more interested in actual guns is what it was. But again, it wasn't until, ironically enough, the 2018 midterms, when I saw the downfall of this country coming, 6 years ago is what it was now, almost, that I went out there and I bought my first gun. I went and put the money together where I sold a bunch of stuff to be able to afford that gun. I did exactly what Jesus Christ himself said back in the day, which was, if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy a sword. What did I do? I sold, ironically enough, a bunch of Magic the Gathering cards, and I bought a gun. And then you know what I did after that? I bought some other guns, too, on top of that. And then I saw how the fucking, idiots like Cortez were getting into office and just completely destroying this country from the inside out is what it was there. And it's one of the main reasons. And honestly, it's ironically enough because, when you look at when people buy guns in this country, like a lot of the reason why people buy guns in this country, it's because they're scared, because they're fearing something, the unknown, basically, is what it is. And I can sit there and say, personally myself, midterms 2018 there, it's exactly what I did, dude. I was fearful of what was to come. I was fearful of the rhetoric the Democrat Party kept pushing at the time to try to take away gun rights into this country, is what it was. Try to attempt to restrict the Second Amendment of the Constitution, which, by the way, they can't physically do ever. Congress cannot pass any law like that, dude. They have no legal authority to attack the Second Amendment at all, is what it is, period, in the story. And when they try to, they should be immediately removed from office when they're primary sponsoring bills and they're co-sponsoring bills, all that stuff like that's what it is. So, anyway. So, yeah, pretty much, my entire adult... And there was one time, by the way, I want to point something out, too, with that matter. In 2009, I moved down to Columbus, Ohio to go to college for a little bit. It was the one time in history where if I had had the money, I would have actually bought a revolver from a pawn shop back then. Because it's the one time in history where I sat there and I was like, yeah, this is kind of a scary ass place to be right now, dude. Like, and I was legit scared in that fucking that city is what it was, dude. And I have a right to be, by the way, because eventually over the next year and a half or so that I lived there, I was robbed. I was almost beaten to death in a fucking alleyway, by the way. If you guys never heard that story, it was, I won't go into the details of it, but needless to say, it was like pretty much almost me getting jumped in the middle of the fucking night is what it was there when I was trying to walk home because some dumbass cabbie was too stupid to know where the fuck High Street was down there is what it was, or specifically where the Greater Columbus Convention Center existed there is what it was. So, yeah, because of that, he put my life in danger is what it was that night. So, anyway, obviously this is pre-Uber and stuff like that. It's pre-Lyft, all stuff like that. So you don't have those apps existing at the time. So you just had like cab rides, but it was back in those days. Which really, I also blame the city on that one because they were too stupid to actually keep the buses running at night on Sunday nights after a certain amount of time. Because if it wasn't for that shit, I would have never been in that situation either. I would have just caught a bus from the convention center to my home as it was back then. So anyway, but thankfully nothing happened. And that again, that's one of the few times in history where I was actually just scared And it would have been nice to have a gun in my pocket that I could have had my hand on and ready to use if it needed to be used. Unfortunately, I did not. So what did I have? I had my keys in one hand, like in between my knuckles and stuff like that is what it was. And then I can't remember if I was carrying a knife at the time or not. I forget offhand if it was. But anyway, I physically cannot remember honestly on that one. I know I had keys in my hand. That was what it was. So, because that's one thing I always remembered from like things I'd seen about self-defense and whatnot was, hey, if something does happen, put the keys in between the knuckles and, use them as basically a better part of a fist is what it was then to like fuck people's eyes up and stuff. So anyway, but, and that's another thing too, by the way, that Andrew brought up with his chick actually was how, Second Amendment is an equalizer. And when there's one of me and two of them, it's an equalizer at that point for sure, 100%. So, but anyway, so basically, 2018 midterms became a gunner for the first time the day before the primaries, what it was, and then proceeded to live my life for the next year or so is what it was, eventually buying more guns during that time, bought a rifle here, bought another handgun there, etc., and eventually then you had the Dayton Massacre happen in 2019, right after El Paso happened the day before that. And you look at these events and you see, who's behind this stuff. And when and this is one thing I've looked into in the past now, and I've realized, in the last few years now as well, for that matter, you can actually see when one of these events, one of these mass shootings is 100% U.S. government done versus one that they basically have a copycat killer in, is what it is. And that's exactly what we saw with El Paso and then Dayton, respectively. You saw El Paso that was definitely government done because they literally scrubbed that dude from the internet as fast as possible. Any information people could have found about him is what it was. And then, 13-ish hours later, give or take, you had this idiot dude Dayton, who we later found out was Antifa and BLM affiliated and stuff like that, was an Elizabeth Warren supporter, etc., by his own admission, everything else like that then. And that one, I believe, was 100% a copycat, where that may have had ties to the government too, but I believe that man went too early, if that be the case, and that's why they did not scrub his stuff fast enough as what it was then. Like, maybe it wasn't supposed to be the next day, maybe it was supposed to be like, a week from then is what it was or something. But either way, I think that was just an independent act is what it was, honestly. And it really did show when that guy was just a lunatic in general, what it was there. So, meanwhile, fast forward a week in time after that, then I get a fucking knock on my door from some feds because they're too stupid to understand what a scenario is what it is, and tried to basically jack up my life back in August 2019 then over literally fucking thought crimes. And, I've discussed this ad nauseum at this point. Fuck Andrew Yang is what it is. Fuck his supporters entirely because they were the ones that federally swatted my ass over nothing is what it is. When you literally have the fucking FBI agent Tim say to my face when they were leaving, we wasted 6 days on this. Yes, you fucked with my life for 6 days, assholes, and I should have your damn pensions at this point forward is what it is. So, yeah, anyway. Which basically doubled down at that point of exactly why I fought harder for the Second Amendment after the fact. And at that point, thank you, Fed boys, by the way, because you have now made me personally anti-background check forever because of that. Because you literally had a list of every single gun I had bought to that point, including makes, models, calibers, etc. So for those that say that the government doesn't have a fucking active gun roster, you're kidding yourselves. I'm going to point that one out right now. And I believe it's actually an interagency one. I don't think it's just one that like FBI has or ATF has, whatever the case be. I think it's a big old database that's done by all the different agencies that have access to that gun database is what it is, dude. So if you've ever done a background check in this country, if you've ever gone to a fel and bought a gun, guess what? That gun is in a database someplace. And if they ever want to fuck with you, they will fuck with you is what it is. So anyway, fast forward, a little bit more in time and stuff like that. 2020 lockdowns happen. A lot more people become Second Amendment affiliated people is what it is at that point, dude. A lot more people become, just like I was in 2018. They were scared. When you have the government, when you have cops out there literally telling them, oh, unless you're being, robbed and murdered and, or raped or whatever the case be, like they're not going to come to your house to, some dude like in your yard, like menacing you and stuff like that. So yeah, you had a bunch of mom and pops go out there, a bunch of grandmas, a bunch of grandpas, etc. A bunch of people who were on the fence with the Second Amendment at the time, who decided to become gun owners in this country. And it was one of the best times in history, I believe, honestly, for gun ownership in this nation is what it is, man. Unfortunately, at the same time, what ended up happening there was what we had at one point when I became a gun owner in this country in 2018 was we had the Trump years of gun ownership, which is basically you had some of the lowest prices on firearms in this country. It's why the barrier to entry was so low when I was able to finally become a gun owner in 2018 there. Versus, now where it's like 2, 3, 4 times as much as it used to be. Now, granted, it's come down a little bit here and there. Like we're getting back to the time where you can essentially get a decent deal on certain things is what it is. But when you have Democrats, when you have rhinos, etc., that continue to push for gun control, that continue to screw with people's Second Amendment rights and screw with the Constitution, etc., all they're doing is, number one, they're becoming the gun salesman of the month at that point, because you're actively having people that are going to be like, you know what, F you, I'm going to go buy more guns now. Or you're going to have the first-time gunners be like, well, hey, I kind of want this thing they're trying to restrict right now is what it is. Let me go grab it before they restrict it is what it is then. Which is why you had AR-15, sales shoot through the roof is what it is now, dude. That's another thing, too, by the way. I did not own an AR-15 for years of my life, actually. I did not own an AR-15 until around the time after my house was broken into and the piece of shit criminals stole one of my firearms here. Ironically enough, what they stole was a platform that kind of looked like an AR-15, but it wasn't. It was a M&P 1522 chambered in 22 LR is what it was. So, which by the way was my rimfire competition gun that never got a chance to even use for rimfire competition in this country. And that's what pisses me off the most of the whole thing, actually. These pieces of shit cost me money, and to this day, the Stark County Sheriff's Office where I live has yet to recover that gun. Almost, 3 years later now is what it is. I doubt I'll ever see that gun again. It's also why I've been working with the General Assembly here in Ohio to actually pass legislation, which they still haven't done, by the way. Nobody's ever introduced this legislation, which they need to at this point. And it should be nationwide legislation for that matter, where if you have a firearm stolen from you and the police / feds don't find it within the first 365 days of it missing, after being stolen, you should be able to petition either state or federal government at that point for a reimbursement of that gun's cost. Now, granted, this would obviously apply to things that aren't like, antiques or like one-of-a-kind kind of things, what it is there. It would basically just be like your basic stuff, like something I had stolen what it was. That cost, several $100s what it is there, which I could not afford to replace at the time. Hell, it took me a year in selling other stuff then to even be able to afford an AR-15. Or I should say the components of that is what it was, where I eventually had some dude build it out for me is what it is for the lower. And then, yeah, I finally been able to shoot the gun now is what it is. So, which, by the way, is in this room someplace. I'm not going to say where. I will say it's in this room, though. And again, hasn't jumped up, hasn't, become an animated object to start firing on its own or anything like that, dude. Because, again, inanimate objects don't fire on their own, dude. You have to have somebody literally behind that gun pulling that trigger is what it is. So, anyway. But yeah, so basically, backstory on how I became a Second Amendment advocate, activist, and constitutionalist in general here is what it is. So basically, going back to 2020, right before the lockdowns, you had a group called Stark Stands United, who became a thing. They were an offshoot of another group called Higher Stands United, which was basically supposed to be originally penned themselves as a group that was basically trying to help out with doing 2A sanctuary movement stuff, which essentially became a big thing back in the 2018 to 2020, give or take, with places like Virginia, where you had a bunch of counties trying to basically enact the Second Amendment sanctuary stuff, so it was there. And it was because you had a bunch of, again, piece of shit Democrats in power who were trying to restrict people's rights, is what it was, when they have no legal authority to do that stuff, is what it is there. And so, it caught wildfire then. And then, of course, lockdowns basically threw cold water on us at the time, though. But yeah, I met a guy who, he was a constitutionalist, 100%. He instilled in me and reinvigorated the fire within me, is what it was, about the constitutional republic that we exist in right now in this country, and we have since 1776 is what it is. And so basically from there, I was with these people for a while, and then eventually they kind of just sort of, like, they still exist as a group, kind of, but not really. Like, they're more or less, all of them actually come under our umbrella now is what it is, I would say at this point. And so anywho, basically in between 2020 and 2021, I called up my state rep a few times and was like, yeah, let's pass stand your ground and stuff like that here and whatnot. Didn't really, like, I wanted to pass, obviously I didn't really do a whole lot to get it done, is what it was, though. However, in 2021, I created OFFF, Ohioans for Firearms Freedom. Between 2021 and 2022, I spent over a year of my life fighting for the Second Amendment in the state, fighting for the passage of constitutional carry, and finally, in May of 2022, we finally got it passed. We finally got it to the governor's desk. DeWine finally signed off on it. And I sat there and I went and took a big sigh of relief, dude, because I felt like I could finally breathe for the first time in over 365 days of my life, is what it was. When I was on the phones constantly calling up state reps, state senators, etc., and being like, yeah, let's get this to the finish line. Let's get this to floor votes. Let's get this to committee votes. Let's get it to second, third hearings, etc. there. Let's get it to the governor's desk. And then kept calling them up with like, hey, when are you guys going to have the floor vote on this? When are you guys going to have the other votes on this stuff, etc., etc.? When's it going to be over the state senate now to get their side of it then? And I'll tell you what, man, like it was a daunting task. It really was. So for anybody to sit there and ever tell me that I was not part of something, that I am not a constitutionalist, that I am not a Second Amendment faithfulist, that I am not a pro Second Amendment guy and did nothing to help pass anything in this state, you can go fuck yourself legitimately on that one, dude. Because if it wasn't for people like me, we wouldn't have a constitutional carry right now in the state. Which is exactly why on June 13, 2022, the day that constitutional carry became law in this state, is when Ohio Patriot Education Network became reality. The network was something that I was creating for years in advance. I was working, basically when I created Ohioans for Firearms Freedom, I knew for a fact it was going to be under an umbrella at some point. And that umbrella would be open. It would be Ohio Patriot Education Network. Because my whole entire thing was, obviously I don't have the money that Michael Bloomberg does, being an anti-gun sack of crap that he is what it is. I wish I had his billions, though, because I would definitely use it for good at this point, man. But yeah, my entire thing basically is to have, 8, 10, 12 groups under this umbrella is what it is eventually, or maybe even more for that matter, where it's all different things fighting for different parts of the Second Amendment, whether it be advocacy, whether it be the criminal justice side, etc., there to help people that have been screwed over with unjust, stop and frisk kind of stuff is what it is there, or basically like, oh, you're too young to have this firearm kind of thing, whatever the case be. So it's like they catch some mission like a firearms motor vehicle charge or something like that. They shouldn't be getting in the first place is what it is then. Yeah, it's fighting for people like that, man. Which is exactly why A few months after Open became a thing, we created DOOR, which is Defenders of Highlands Rights is what it is. And unfortunately, don't have the money for the coffers yet for that one. If we did, though, we'd have lawyers on retainer right now. And we'd actually have lawyers that would help us fight to get people's cases overturned at this point who have been wrongfully convicted under stuff. Specifically, one of the first cases I would love to see us take on would be the guy who was on OP Live, the successor to Live PD, a couple years ago up in Toledo there, because this guy, 19 years old, and mind you, the way that the NRA, who I hate, by the way, just because of this shit, you literally have myself on this whole thing, the entirety of the fucking football field, by the way, doing my work behind the scenes, making these calls, doing this stuff, talking to state reps, talking to their people that I'm trying to think of the freak this people are called now. Their aides, to talk with them about, like, oh yeah, you know, can I talk to the state rep? Are they available, whatnot, you know, things, stuff like that. Spent that entire time there, only to the days before Senate Bill 215, aka Constitutional Carry, was passed, to have the National Rifle Association's idiotic chapter heads come into my state and water this shit down. Put dumbass Terry stops and stuff like that into it, man. Which is exactly what screwed this kid at the end of the day. You had a 19-year-old kid up in Toledo a couple years ago who was carrying constitutionally, but of course, because of the way that they wrote the constitutional carry legislation, you have to be 21 and over. And because of the Terry stop thing, oh, your tinted windows that are factory tint are too tinted, bro, so we can now pull you over because we're the Toledo cops. And of course, when they did, they found a gun on him then. I think they found a teeny little bag of weed, like maybe like a couple of joints worth or something. And so they hit him with like several felonies, what it is then. And it's all a bunch of BS, dude. From my understanding, this guy had no criminal record before that. Now he has like multiple felony records and stuff like that. And it's also, by the way, in that year time span that I was fighting for constitutional carry in this state, of exactly why I was fighting so hard to get Terry Johnson, the primary sponsor of SB 215, to actually add in a thing to actually lower the age down to 18 and over, being able to carry constitutionally, not 21 and over. Because at the time, you actually had Indiana obviously passing theirs for 18 and over is what it was. And that became law of the land after ours did is what it was then. So, but yeah, so basically I was sitting there for, you know, years of my life doing that stuff is what it was. You know, most of 2023 there, didn't really do much. Obviously, you know, mom unfortunately passed. She was my rock, man, when it came to a lot of this stuff. She was helping me out. She, you know, if one of the phones died on me, she would hand me another one and stuff like that to make more calls that day and stuff. And really, she was a great woman, honestly. You know, she was one of the best, man. You know, she really wasn't pro 2A herself. I never really considered her to be that thing, but she was also understood, by the way, that you needed guns, that you needed to protect yourself from tyrannical governments is what it was, dude. And criminals alike, for that matter. You know, the same criminals that they're releasing over a border every single day is what it is right now. So, anyway. And then about a month and a half ago, give or take, obviously she passed. Today is actually, I believe, 7 weeks since she passed now. About 3 to 4 weeks ago, give or take now, I created what I call TPEN, Texas Patriot Education Network. We are still looking right now for a chapter head in the state of Texas for that one to actually take that over from us and essentially run with that and have the ball in their court basically at this point. But yeah, right now our entire focus is to have multiple networks in multiple states pretty much throughout the next 10 years or so, give or take. I would love to have a Patriot Education Network in all 50 states across this country, actually, by 2030, if I could. Unfortunately, that's never going to happen unless I hit the lottery or something. But, yeah, my focus right now is to basically, you know, work on Open is what it is. And then eventually we're going to work on TPEN and do what needs to be done there, and so forth and so on. But one thing I really do want to do though in the next couple of years here is definitely get my certification to be a firearms instructor. I don't care who it's under, whether it be the NRA or whether it be friggin' anybody else for that matter. You know, there's a bunch of different ones that will actually certify you as what it is, but I don't really care which it is as long as I can become a certified firearms instructor, because the whole entire point of the network itself, our entire go-to thing, our entire, foundational beginnings was twofold. It was firearms education along with constitutional rights education of people that don't really understand stuff like that and need it kind of, discussed to them and, sort of layman's terms to them is what it is. And then the second thing was to actually do courses of both parents and kids for that matter. Because I truthfully believe that, honestly, one thing that we have failed in as a country, 100% across the board, is not instilling Second Amendment basic firearm safety training into every kid in this country right now. Every single American child that goes through a public education or even a private education system in this country for 12 years of their life should know by their senior year of high school the ins and outs of a firearm, whether that be how to break the gun down, whether that be how to load the magazine, whether that be the basic rules of firearm safety, etc., etc. They should know how to do every single one of those things. We should be actively teaching these kids and training these kids in our fundamental foundings of our founding fathers of this country, of legislation that government cannot restrict, the actual Bill of Rights in this country, dude. Things that these great men, the greatest men who you could say ever lived in America, literally were in secret in churches. The black robe clergy, for those who don't know about that one, you ever heard about that one? There's a group of priests out there from the 1700s called the black robe clergy. This is something I learned about a few years ago too, by the way. These men protected our founding fathers while they were writing our founding documents, while they were writing the Bill of Rights. Had they been caught, they would have been killed for treason in this country, dude, by the British Empire, by the tyrannical government who had taken over here. And that is exactly why I fight as hard as I do to protect our Second Amendment rights, to protect our constitutional republic for what it is right now. And I will die fighting. And I mean that seriously. Not many people can say that, dude. I am willing to die on my fucking feet before I am ever, ever put to my fucking knees by tyrannical government ever again. And it's as simple as that, really. I don't know anybody else that could say that, dude. There are some who may, and they may be speaking the truth, honestly. But there's not many, dude. There's not many who will actually say it with conviction and mean it like that. I do. But yeah, one of our things that we want to do though, obviously, is, I want to put the money together right now, which unfortunately we don't have on hand right now, but we potentially could at some point in the future. And I want to create, I think to begin with, probably a monthly course would be my guess. Or it would be at least once a month anyway, maybe twice a month, depending. And we would have basically these people who, come out here, and we would take what we would do is we do two things actually. We would have a range day, and we would have an actual classroom day, and it might be the same thing actually throughout the whole thing. It might be very similar to how you would get a concealed carry license in the state, where it's like X amount of hours in a classroom and then a couple hours on the range is what it is then. And it would be us basically teaching these people ins and outs of a constitution, why their rights matter so much, etc. And then from there, it would be us literally going on the range and teaching them how to shoot, etc. there. So, providing the guns, providing the ammo, all that stuff like that. And it would just be getting them to know the basics, the ins and outs of the firearm, etc., etc. So, and if we could do that, I think we would make a lot of good constitutionalists like ourselves in this country. We would actually be able to create a new generation of people who love this nation, who love this constitutional republic for what it is and what it should stand for, and be able to have future generations actually have Second Amendment rights in this country is what it is. So, anyway. But moving on to the Whatever podcast here for a couple minutes, what it is. I do want to mention something here. I'm going to preface this, obviously. We are going to discuss things from this cast, and again, it's all, from my understanding, will be fair use stuff. So I might do some screenshots here from the stuff, or some little like clips of what it is there, and then we might just do some audio, what it is as well, in that matter. But basically, this is where they started out Andrew and this girl started talking about the Second Amendment, specifically guns and stuff like that. At about the 2-hour mark, I'm not going to sit there and go through like 13, 14 minutes of stuff right now because it's not really 100% worth it. Basically, where we're at right now in this clip is she has taken the stance of a person having a gun is fine, people having multiple guns is not okay kind of thing. His stance has basically been, hey, gun ownership is, worthwhile. Guns go up in value. You should have a lot of guns, et cetera, there. And it's basically them going back and forth here. And then eventually what we're going to get into in a couple minutes here is going to be where I'm at, which is all these females that are actually on the panel that are against this girl who actually openly admit that they want to learn to shoot, want to learn to have a ability to be equally protected and be able to protect themselves and have that equalizer that is that firearm against a potential, evildoer, criminal, villain, whatever you call it at that point then. So, and that's exactly where we want to be there is what it is, dude. We want to be the people who are teaching these chicks to be able to defend themselves, creating that next generation of gun owners, what it is in this country. So, anywho.
What if he was a cop?
Okay, so.
I still don't know why a cop needs to have a lot of guns.
What if he was a cop?
Okay, I gotta go back on that for a minute now.
That has nothing to do with guns. Am I
Well, I
aggressive?
mean,
Am I
if you're asking in an abstract,
I do want to point something out here too, by the way, with this list girl. I'm not sure what her name is, honestly, but like, it's funny that she's essentially talking about a lot of guns being a red flag for like some dude or whatever the case, because that's one thing that they were mentioning here. I would say the fact that she has a full sleeve tattoo, where obviously the upper part of it is some person's face, but then if you look further down into the actual like forearm there, it looks like there's another face on there someplace. I would say that a bunch of tattoos like that is kind of a weird red flag, honestly, myself. I'm just going to point that out right now is what it is, man, because it is very strange, honestly, legitimately. Very, very weird in general. So, anyway. But yeah, he's basically going back and forth with her about, walls of guns and having a bunch of guns, basically. So,
why does a person need X?
I don't think OnlyFans girls are like collecting guns. I don't know.
What would that have to do with anything?
I'm very uncomfortable around guns.
If you're asking in this abstract of why does a person need to do X, he doesn't need to do it. What's the problem with him doing it?
It's just something that I wouldn't feel comfortable around a lot of guns. If I just wouldn't.
See, and I think this is the thing right here, right? I'm going to point this out right now. Like, just the way she said that with that kind of like, sort of like half-ass conviction, but kind of conviction still, if that be the case. This is what I have personally seen with a lot of these anti-gunner types, especially these moms and man action types that are fighting against our rights at this point, is it's this weird fear that they have. And I don't understand it, man. I really don't. But it's just like, I don't know if it's just like some weird fear that they had as a child or something happened to them as a child, like psychologically messed up their heads or whatever it was, dude. But like, you'll notice that a lot of these people, a lot of these females like that, will have this weird ingrained fear. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they don't have the knowledge of the Second Amendment. They don't have the knowledge of firsthand shooting a gun is what it is. Because that's the thing. When they get over that initial fear of a gun and they actually pick up a gun and start, having a range day and having the ability to, have your certified instructor there teaching you how to shoot, teaching you the basics of how to shoot, the basics of how to stand, etc. there, dude. And finally pull that trigger and keep pulling that trigger and, emptying that mag for, 12, 17 rounds, whatever it is at that point. Or if you're going to have a revolver, whatever it is, 5-6 shot revolver there, they're going to shoot down range, and then eventually it's them shooting, a rifle, whether that be a 22 or whether that be a 5.56 AR-15, etc. there. I guarantee their stance on guns will change in many cases. Now, granted, if they're already like so, left-wing-ish, MDA types and stuff like that, I think unfortunately for them people, they are a total lost cause at this point. I don't think they're ever going to change their minds, mostly because of the fact they're getting a fat paycheck from Michael Bloomberg and Shana Watts right now, dude. And I don't care how many times I want to sit there and claim they're a volunteer. No. When you're getting a big old fat paycheck that's literally says paid by the order of Michael Bloomberg and every town and stuff like that, dude, whatever it is there, however their checks are written out there. Yeah, you're not a volunteer for anything, dude. You're literally getting paid to do this as a job to attack people's constitutionally God-given rights in this country. And I think that's a lot of the problem too with these people as well as they hate God for that matter. Specifically the MDA types, dude, man, a lot actually. They hate the fact that we have the actual rights in this country, that we have the God-given ability to defend ourselves, birthright stuff right now is what it is, dude. By our birth, we have these rights instilled upon us is what it is then. So anyway, but yeah, I find it very interesting though that she essentially has taken the almost like scared stance is what it is there, because again, I think in a lot of cases it's actually just ignorance is what it is. You have no knowledge of this thing because you either don't want to go do this thing, you don't want to go to that range and fire this gun, whatever it is there, or you just choose not to go down that road because you're doing other things, whether it be OnlyFans or whether it be something else for that matter to make yourself a bunch of money is what it is then. And it's very interesting too, by the way, because and this is a thing I've had with Honda and them in the last couple of weeks is what it is now. Discussions with those dudes is how when you look at where we've gone in this country right now, the irony of everything right now is we're pretty much going like full circle all the way around to where it's like you have the beginnings of this country start on Second Amendment ownership, revolution kind of stuff, but also the oldest profession known to man, prostitution, making a comeback in the form of stuff like OnlyFans, etc. there, and like Fansly and all these other, offshoot sites like that's what it is there. So I do find that very interesting, man. And I also find it very interesting, too, because of the fact that both those things existed very heavily during the Old West in this country, which is something that people like the Moms Man Action types love to bring up so heavily, and this is the thing. This is why you can always call people on their lies, by the way, with the MDA type chicks is what it is, dude, with Moms Man Action type women there. Because just like they said here in Ohio, back when they were fighting against constitutional carry from becoming law in the state, and I was fighting for it, obviously. And you had these people like Christine Woolworth here and stuff being all like, oh, if this happens and this passes and becomes law, there's going to be blood in the streets and it's going to be the wild, wild west and stuff like that. But guess what? Attorney General Dave Yost did his due diligence and did a 3-year study. 2021, the year before constitutional carry. 2022, the year of constitutional carry. 2023, the year after constitutional carry. You know what they found? 6 of 8 major cities in Ohio, all run by Democrats. I want to point that out too, by the way, because it is relevant. All 6 of these Democrat hell pockets in the state of Ohio all had a decrease in crime and a decrease in shootings, etc. in the year since constitutional carry became law, which now it's almost 2 years. It's about a year and trying to think now. 21 months right now will be the overall time period now. A year and 9 months currently. Just under that, actually, because it would be the 13th of June would be the 2-year anniversary then. So, which, by the way, is also going to be the 2-year anniversary of Ohio Patriot Education Network then. Which we will be celebrating that with our 2A shirt, by the way, that we got from our friend Krabby Turtle. So, although I wish he would have been able to find a slightly bigger size for me because, that 3X he got me does not quite fit. Very much, very, very too snug on my body right now, dude. 100%. And I love the outline of it, by the way, because it's basically just a picture of the state of Ohio on it with a rifle in the middle. It kind of looks like an AR-15 is what it is then. So, but I wish it was in like 5 or 6X, honestly, that I actually do wear. So, anywho, unfortunately, that's the problem with a lot of these t-shirt companies and a lot of these like pro trade companies like that is people don't understand that there's fat people that are gunners in this country, dude, like myself, who need bigger shirts, who need bigger clothing, etc. there, man. It's like, yeah, make our stuff a little bigger, man. In fact, I'd be willing to pay a little bit more money for it, for God's sakes. If you just made it my size is what it is, people, come on. Make it in 5, make it in 6X, and I'll pay the extra, $20-$30 a shirt, whatever it is then. So, but anywho. But yeah, so anyway, I just wanted to point that out about MDA and stuff like that, and how it's, it's sort of the same line of thinking there, where that chick is basically like, oh yeah, this thing or that thing, or whatever the case be. And that's the problem right now, is I believed previously, many, many years ago in my life, that it wasn't quite willful ignorance. I believe it is definitely willful ignorance in many cases now, dude, because there is so many statistical factors that disprove everything that this woman has said, whether it be her talking about, having guns is going to, basically the old stats, well, having a gun in the house is going to lead to more, people being shot with gun kind of thing is what it is, dude. It's like, yeah, that's like the exact same thing of you saying, okay, let's have a bunch of fucking knives in our house. Oh, more people getting stabbed now is what it is, kind of thing, It's nonsensical BS is what it is, dude. Across the board. 100%. And that's the problem right now with these people, is they do not understand that line of rationale, that line of thinking is what it is. And so they'll try to push forward false narratives, or it's, in worst case scenario, is actually, it's like the MBA types of stuff out there, or the anti-gunner left and stuff like that, your Alice Russo types here in Ohio and stuff like what it is there. Well, they'll sit there and falsely claim like, 90% of Ohioans support this crap or that crap, where it's like red flag laws, universal background checks, and anything else like that's what it is. Yet, meanwhile, when you actually look at the surveys that they've done for this whole thing, first off, it's a leftist college campus in this state, usually like Ohio State or something else for that matter. Whereas a lot of, by the way, Antifa and BLM supporters that are the ones they're surveying on this whole thing. Bunch of kids from the years of 18 and 22 years old is what it is there, man, that have been indoctrinated to hate guns their entire lives is what it is, actually, by our public education system. And then number 2 on that one, when you actually look at the numbers of the people that they got to be surveyed for this whole thing, for that 80-90% thing, whatever it is, dude, it's less than 500 people. The one they did here like a year and a half ago or so, it was like 462 people from it, dude. And they're trying to tell me that like 90% of Ohioans support this crap. It's like, no, dude. What you have is you have like 400 something people that you surveyed who support this garbage, because even the way that you tell it to them, because that's another thing too, by the way, it's not like they're sitting there and saying to this person that, they're like, oh, excuse me, sir or madam, do you support universal background checks? Because first and foremost, when you ask somebody that question, they're going to be like, that doesn't know anything about guns or like actual background checks in this country, they're going to be like, what the hell is a universal background check? Or at least that should be their first question, obviously. But no, what they're going to ask them is, it's like, oh, do you support background checks to buy firearms? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, okay, we got another one. And that's what it is, dude. So they're falsifying the data to begin with, is what it is then. because you're not even asking them the correct question, which the correct question should be, excuse me, sir or madam, do you support having to go through a background check to even do private sales of firearms ownership in this country? You know what most people are going to tell you, especially people that actually are pro-gun? No, I don't want a Hitler-style gun roster that allows the government to know every single firearm I ever owned or ever own, and have to go through background checks that are paid through out of my own pocket every time I want to sell a gun to someone in a private sale, etc., etc. Because that's the problem entirely right there, dude. That's why I can't stand these people at all, dude, that are pushing for this stuff, because they are the biggest and worst oath breakers in this country. They are people who have sat here and they have sworn an oath to our U.S. Constitution to protect the Second Amendment, to not infringe on our constitutionally God-given rights in this country. Yet, what do every time that they push this crap? They're doing exactly that. They're breaking their oath to office. They are trying to deprive the American people of our right to keep and bear arms. And they are openly and actively committing at least, at minimum, one misdemeanor every time that they're pushing for gun control in this country, which that misdemeanor is called deprivation of rights under color of law. The minimum charge you can get for that, by the way, if you actually are arrested underneath that, is 1 year and 1 day, so 366 days, in a jail cell. After you get out after that year and a day, you can never, ever hold elected office ever again. Second charge for that, that's a little bit higher up, is 10 years imprisonment. Again, never hold elected office ever again. Third possible charge, life imprisonment. Fourth possible charge, death penalty. All of which depend on severity of the crime, etc., etc. Which, as I've said many times before, deprivation of rights under color of law should be a felony nationwide at this point, because if it was, we the people would easily have the ability to go citizens arrest these criminal-ass politicians right out of office right now, dude, and replace them with good people, whether it be ourselves or somebody else who supports Second Amendment, etc. there, who's not going to be an infringer, who's not going to be an oath breaker, etc. So, anyway. But going back to the rest of this, though, because I want to get to the point where these chicks are discussing stuff. Here's what it is. So let's go ahead and listen to Andrew and this chick having it out then.
Yeah, I mean, is it telling you something about him? Do you think that it pushes some sort of ideology? Is there an ideological distinction? What's the problem?
Okay. So I've been in abusive relationships in the past, and steroids.
So going back to what you just said there, abusive relationships in the past. This is another thing with MDA too, by the way. A lot of people that are part of that group is they will very much push that narrative as well, where I think in a lot of cases what it actually is these people are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder is what it is. They have PTSD. They don't want to admit they have PTSD, because if they did admit that stuff, they would actually, need to seek counseling. And I think that's what many of it is actually in many cases, is you have people that they refuse to actually admit what the case is right now, refuse to admit their own, post-traumatic stress stuff, refuse to actually seek medical professional help is what it is. And again, what does it lead to? It leads to more and more bad issues in this country. It leads to more and more people being mentally, messed up in the head and stuff like that, and not getting the help they need is what it is then. And again, unfortunately, it leads to more anti-gunner people in this country as well, for that matter. So, but anyway. And this is the thing. This is why I can kind of sympathize with this chick, because of the fact she's like, oh yeah, like abusive relationship and stuff like that. And again, it's like, would you not want to have a gun because of that alone, dude? It's like, you have been in a relation, like as she said, steroids and stuff like that. So I'm going to assume her boyfriend was a crazy ass juice head and was probably trying to beat the fuck out of her, is my guess. And it's like, why would you not want a gun to defend yourself against that insanity, man? Seriously. Like that's my question right there, is what it is. And I don't know if it's because this chick is so mentally off her rocker or what it is, man. But like, apparently she's not for that. Is what it is, though.
Guns, things like that. Maybe playing violent video games were a trait of.
Okay, that's just a straight up lie.
Violent tendency in my personal life, in my experience. I'm not saying all men that collect guns. So for me personally, it would be a red flag if I walked into the house and I saw a lot of guns.
What if he was a cop?
I still don't know why a cop needs to have a lot of guns at his house.
Well, I mean, I guess my understanding of your kind of pushback here is that abusive men have guns.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a little weird that men would collect a room of guns.
What?
I think it is.
Why? They have lots of value, and they go up in value every year.
Yeah,
it's a great
exactly.
investment.
So are Birkins. You think that's a red flag for women to have a lot of expensive bags?
No, those go down in value every year.
Birkins and like Chanel bags?
Basically, all fashion items.
Do Chanel bags go down in value,
generally.
ladies? All Chanel bags? No, it usually actually goes up. So I think that
I'm talking in generalities here.
So
generally, fashion items are going to go down in value.
So all guns go up in value?
All guns go up in value every year, yes.
I still don't want a bunch of guns in my significant other's house. I have a niece and nephew. I don't want to walk in. I just want to feel comfortable. Okay,
so that's another problem right there that I want to point out as well. When she's like, "Oh, I don't want them because my family, the kids is what it is, dude." Okay, here's a wild idea. This is why we teach children the basics of firearms rules in this country. You teach them the basics. You teach them the 4 rules of firearm safety. And you have kids that respect a gun. If they see a gun sitting there, if they see a gun, on a mantle, whatever the case be, dude, they're most likely not going to touch it. Most likely not going to fool with it is what it is. It's the kids who have never, been taught those rules of firearm safety at all in their lives that are just like, ooh, look at this thing. Look what I found. And then they'll sit there and they'll start, waving it around and pointing at each other and stuff like that. And that's when you have these kids end up shooting each other by accident and stuff like that. Because they don't know any better. Because they've never been taught any better. Because, again, it's the adults in their lives that have failed them. That have failed to instill the basic knowledge of the Second Amendment in them. And that's the problem right now. And it's as simple as that, really. So anyway, moving back to this whole exchange then.
If he has them all locked up, he just has a wall of them.
I said a gun is okay. I don't want a wall of guns. I would personally feel uncomfortable. I'm allowed to feel uncomfortable around a lot of guns. It's just weird.
Yeah, you're allowed to. I'm just wondering what the reasoning for why you feel that way is. It's just an inanimate object.
It's just kind of, it's scary to me. You see it in movies and videos, and it's like always in a violent way. You're not like, hey,
as long as it's...
Well, see, and again, what she just said there is exactly what the problem is in our country right now, dude. Because again, why are you always seeing it that way, lady? Oh yeah, that's right. Because the mainstream media, Operation Mockingbird, since the 1970s with the mainstream media, has been pushing a narrative to attack the Second Amendment. That's why you're always seeing that stuff. That's why you're always seeing it portrayed as, oh, it's this evil, scary object, etc., etc. And I also want to point something out, too, for that matter. It's funny when you even go on this site, by the way, when you type in the Google search engine here on YouTube and stuff, and you're just like, gun buying scene is one of the things you can type in there. And it'll pop up a bunch of different movie scenes of people buying guns and stuff like that, dude. Guess what they're never doing during those buying scenes, man? They're never going to NFL to buy a gun. They're always buying them in some kind of a private sale. Usually from people who are kind of fucking shady is what it is, man. People who probably are prohibited people themselves who are in illegal possession of those guns that are selling them to these people is what it is then, dude. Actually, one of the best gun buying scenes, this is all pre, background checks and stuff like that, how we should be able to buy guns in this country, actually, which was the movie Highwaymen with Kevin Costner and Woody Harrelson a couple years ago. And this was set back in the 1930s, specifically 1934 time period, right around the time the NFA became a thing in this country, which is all unconstitutional, by the way, for the last 90 years. We've talked about that ad nauseum in this on this channel for the last couple of days now. But anyway, so the whole point is, though, you have Kevin Costner going to this gun shop with his little booklet of guns and stuff like that's what it is that exists at the time. And, you know, like pointing out different guns to this guy. He's like, yeah, let me see that Thompson submachine gun, that BAR over there, this over here, that over there. You know, that Model 11 riot gun, that 1917 Smith, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, 1911 is what it was in front of it then. And yeah, he's just having these guys like lay out a bunch of guns on the counters, what it is there. And then the guy's like, oh, what shall it be? And the guy's just like, all of them. And yeah, just walks out with a bunch of guns, man, is what it is. And that's exactly what it should be, man. You should be able to walk into a gun shop, pick out a bunch of guns, like 8, 10 guns, whatever it is, dude. And you just walk out with a bunch of guns then. Unfortunately, what's happened in our country now in the last several decades is what it is you have a whole bunch of criminals across the board right now who want to do harm to the rest of us, want to do bad things to the rest of us. And so you'll have crap like the Gun Control Act of 68. You'll have crap like the NFA of 34. You'll have other garbage like the Houston Amendment of 86 that restricts our right to actually be able to build full auto in this country without a tax stamp, et cetera, there. And so forth and so on. And it's all a bunch of crap, dude. And the thing of it is, though, you know, you have these Democrats and these rhinos go out there and they'll talk about like, oh, you know, mass shooting this, mass shooting that. Yet they never bring up the fact that in 1990, 34 years ago, then Senator Joe Biden introduced the Gun-Free School Zones Act of 1990 to help get it passed into law under George H.W. Bush. That piece of legislation alone is responsible for every massacre in a gun-free zone in this country for almost 35 years now. For over 34 years now. Because it directly created soft targets from every school in this country to every other area that wants to call itself a gun-free zone. A college campus, a mall, a movie theater, a random restaurant, whatever the case be. Any of these places that want to have a no gun sign on the wall or the door, wherever it is there, dude, and want to act like they're a gun-free zone. And then you wonder why things like Maine happened, where you had the bowling alley that literally has a big old friggin' sign out front of it there, or at least did anyway. Talked about, oh, you know, no guns allowed in the place here, or whatever the case be. Which, by the way, those stupid-ass signs don't hold the weight of law in any state that's a constitutional carry state, by the way. Because you can legally carry on you in any place you go, man, because you are legally able to constitutionally carry to protect yourself and your loved ones is what it is. And they don't know you're constitutionally carrying, obviously, unless the gun would like fall out of your fucking pants somehow, or whatever the case be then. And even then, they have to ask you to leave. It's not like a whole thing where you can just be arrested for that kind of stuff. And ironically enough, with the whole Maine shooting there is what it was. You had a guy who was a nut job that should have been a predator person a while before that, obviously. And it was all cops' failures, what it was, dude. 100% across the board. And then when you had the guys who were actually trying to stop that lunatic that night, it was a bunch of unarmed guys trying to basically mob the dude and all got shot in the process. Or in the case where he walked over to the other place that was it was like a bar grill place is what it was there. You had the manager of the place grab a big old knife from the kitchen, like a big ass butcher knife from the kitchen is what it was, and try to run up and stab this dude. And unfortunately got shot before he was able to get on top of him in that 21-foot rule kind of thing. So, yeah. You had multiple people that died heroes that night. Whereas if any of these people had been armed, not disarmed themselves with that stupid-ass sign on the front doors, they could have easily pulled their own gun in self-defense and killed this guy. or at least engage in a firefight long enough to where maybe he's distracted by the guy who's, shooting back against him and stuff like that. And you got some people coming out of the side or whatever the case be that could walk up and like slug him in the fucking mouth or something like that is what it would be then, man. And take him out that way then. So, but yeah, that's the problem right now, dude. Is when you cannot meet a force multiplier with other force, you're in a worse position in this country is what it is. And this chick sitting there saying about how she's all about like, oh, have a gun, but not a bunch of guns is what it is. It's just ignorance, dude, is what it is. It's just ignorance. And in a lot of cases, like I said, that's just her own scared mindset is what it is then. So anyway, going back to the rest of this though that I want to discuss here, because we're almost to the point where I want to talk about them.
It's fun. I just wouldn't want to be around them. Accidents happen, and I'm just very I just don't.
Yeah, accidents happen. People are being stupid, lady.
If you're in an abusive relationship,
I have been.
Would you Yeah. Why is it that you wouldn't recommend the one tool which can equalize force between men and women that a woman doesn't get?
That a woman doesn't get that a man would have?
No. The only thing.
So I do want to point something out there that he just said there. It's not just women that would have be weaker and stuff, dude. Hell, people like myself who have serious arthritis in my hands right now, as you can see from my finger right there. It's a great example. Actually, this one's a better one too, for that matter. And then knuckles on this finger too, as well. It's all arthritis, all a bunch of arthritis in my knuckles there, dude. And my thing is, even in my joints and stuff, I have rheumatoid arthritis in there too, as well. I am a weaker dude now because of this whole thing, dude. It's one of the main reasons why I carry a gun with me wherever I go, because I know for a fact if something pops off, I'm not going to be able to go fucking toe-to-toe and fist fight somebody, bro. Because most likely it's not just going to be me versus one other person. It's going to be me versus a fucking pack of people at that point. They're going to try to mob my ass. And I'm not going to get fucking murked out like half these people did in 2020 in the fucking 2020 riots and stuff like that by these BLM and Antifa terrorist types, dude. No, I'm going to fucking take my force multiplier and I'm going to defend my fucking life with it is what it is. If they want to come at me, guess what, motherfucker? They must be prepared to get shot is what it is. Because I will defend myself versus a bunch of motherfucking pieces of shit who are trying to attack me and kill me is what it is that night. Now, granted, I'm not going to put myself in that situation to begin with, but even still, most other people wouldn't have either for that matter. I mean, hell, look at the McCleskey family there. Mark and Patricia there. It was them just trying to hang out in their fucking house. And you got a bunch of these assholes breaking down their fucking gate and shit, dude, in the middle of the fucking day. So yeah, they had to pull their guns and defend themselves what it was then. And by the way, they still have yet to this day to get back those firearms from the piece of shit state is what it is, dude. Because the scumbags who took them are a bunch of a-hole anti-gunner pieces of crap is what it is, man. So anyway.
Equalize force between men and women is a gun.
Okay.
That's it. That's the only force equalizer which is even possible.
But it's not like I own the guns and I have access and keys and I can go in there and use his guns.
Yeah, but if you were a person who was abused or has been victim of abuse, wouldn't you want to own a gun?
Yeah, you would think.
No. I feel very safe in my living situation where I live, and I don't feel like I need a gun there.
I would love to know exactly what area this woman lives in, because you know what she reminds me of? She reminds me of this other girl that was on that cast one time, where they went into the scenario of her and her husband or boyfriend or whatever it was to her at that point, and him being armed and stuff like that, versus a gang of 5 dudes trying to break into their house and stuff like that. And then he's like, Brian was all like, well, when they start beating your dude and killing him then, and beating him to death basically, and she's like, I didn't think they were going to kill him. And it's like, what the fuck do you think they were going to do? Walk up and start sucking his dick? Seriously, lady? For real? Of course they're there to fucking hurt him, and they're probably going to rape your ass too, is my guess, honestly, on that one. When they're finished killing his ass is what it'd be then. Because that's what these home invaders love to do, man, is what it is. For real. And that's the entire point. So it's why wouldn't you want them to have that force multiplier is what it is? But in that girl's case, the other girl's case there, when she was talking about her husband, boyfriend, guy, whatever it was, versus like 5 dudes that were trying to break in the home. It's like the entire point is, man, you should not only want that force multiplier, you should have that force multiplier, but really it shows me at that point of it really is like, tell me you grew up in a gated community without saying it really is what it is. Or tell me you live in a fucking place that is super rich and has like armed security everywhere to where you're not going to be fucking harmed. Because that's the thing, right? If we lived in a country without the Second Amendment, without the ability for people to defend themselves and protect themselves versus criminals and a tyrannical government for that matter, this woman would not be safe. If she was in any other country across this earth right now, even other first world nations that have been overtaken by illegals and stuff like that, dude, she could easily be the victim of assault in one of these countries. And she would have nobody to protect her because in most cases, the cops overseas there don't have guns, dude, at all. And in many cases, civilians are barred from ownership too, for that matter. And then you wonder why people are getting hurt all the time. You wonder why you have acid attacks where they're sitting there walking up and just chucking a couple fucking acid in your face and stuff like that. Or you wonder why somebody walks in with a blade and just starts stabbing you and stuff like that, man. And of course, these are in the same countries that have done away with their guns by banning guns decades ago. And now they have a bunch of knife crime. Now they're trying to ban knives too, for that matter. And it's like, or I don't know, you could just deal with the criminal element in these countries, dude, for real. And honestly, that's one thing I would love to see, like overseas, in places like the UK, etc., that have done away with guns there, dude. Is people, like, enough people just have enough is what it is, get into power there and just be like, you know what, fuck all y'all. We're bringing guns back into this country. Civilian ownership is back, baby, across the board kind of thing. And you just have them basically embrace Second Amendment is what it is then. Like, that's one thing I would love to see with so many countries across this earth right now, dude, is just them embracing an actual constitutional republic then. And essentially taking what America's Constitution is, the U.S. Constitution, and just essentially copy and pasting it into their own country is what it is there. And at least, at very, very minimum, I would say do the Bill of Rights is what it is. Do the U.S. Bill of Rights, put it into your own country's Constitution at that point, and our Second Amendment becomes your Second Amendment then as well. And we have a much better earth overall after it's all said and done then. So, anyway. But continuing on here, though.
Yeah, I know, but for generally for abuse victims, don't you think they'd want to own a gun?
Not all abuse.
Considering it's the only thing that can equalize force between men and women. Do you think that people that have been
abused need to have a gun to protect themselves?
Yes.
Not all.
I'm sorry, say that again?
So not. I wouldn't feel like a gun. I wouldn't want to have a gun on me. I wouldn't want to use a gun. That could ruin my life. Just because I was in a situation, like I don't.
What?
How would a gun ruin your life?
Yeah, that seems silly.
If it was an argument and it went off in a situation, I wouldn't want to have
guns don't go off in arguments.
Yeah, that's just nonsensical.
It's going to be an argument and a gun's going to go off. Guns don't jump off the shelf because you're in an argument.
No, a gun doesn't make me feel safe. A gun does not make me feel safe against a abusive man.
Is that just because you don't know how to use one?
I just don't want a gun. I'm allowed to not want to have a gun in my home.
Yeah, you're allowed to. I was just curious. I just wanted to dive in a little bit because it seems to me, that if you were a female and you were concerned because you had been an abuse victim in the past, that the one tool which exists, which could equalize force between men and women, I would think that women would want that.
Yeah, for sure, 100%.
Do women want that? Do you guys
yes,
feel like you want to
I would love to learn how to shoot a gun and use it for protection at all times.
Okay. Anyone else?
I would.
Smart.
I would.
That's fucking smart, by the way. That's smart.
Yeah, did you see how fast so the one girl specifically stepped up and was like, oh yeah, I want to learn how to use it. And then they're like everybody else, and it's like, yep. So it was like 5 or 6 of them. I think even Madison back here was saying, yeah.
Like, yeah, for safety. I have mace next to my door.
You can't bring mace to a gunfight, though.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think
just saying, what if someone comes up
to
Wait. She has mace next to her door. So I'm assuming she's talking about like pepper spray, not like an actual mace from like, the Crusades times in this world. Because that would actually be funny if she actually meant an actual mace. You know, like that Morningstar thing kind of deal, like Daryl had in the Walking Dead and shit. Like something like that, where it's like an actual like club that has like a bunch of spikes on it and stuff. So, although to be fair, like if we're gonna be honest with ourselves, though, man, like, you know, depending if you would have like a mace like that, and you would know somebody's coming in with a gun or whatever the case be, and you were able to like, you know, get one good clean like just smack off on their head or whatever the case be, then you might be able to actually win that fight. Now that being said, then is when you actually pick up their gun. And if there's other ones, you know, behind them in that situation, whatever the case be, then you start, you know, ding, 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 and the ones behind them is what it is then, man. Because you're only going to get that one shot off with any kind of like club thing, whatever the case be then. So, anyway.
You're getting robbed, yeah, or like if you're getting robbed, you need to protect yourself. I don't think there's anything wrong with having.
I don't think I need a gun to protect myself. I don't put myself in situations where I'm a person. I don't go out late at night. I live in New York. I'm not like walking around.
Wait. Doesn't put herself in situations yet lives in New York. You mean where they're bringing in a ton of illegals, lady? Just because you're not putting yourself in that situation doesn't mean that they're not going to put you in that situation. And that's the thing, right? A criminal's not going to sit there and tell you, oh, you know, no, you're fine. You just walk, whatever the case be you want to do then. Dude, we were watching on Honda's chat last night. It was supposed to be in the Dayton, Ohio area. There was 2 or 3 guys that were supposed to be illegals in this country who were literally trying to break into somebody's place, yanking up their freaking garage door in the middle of the fucking day, for God's sakes. Criminals don't give a shit about the law, lady. They're not going to wait until 9 p.m. or 2 a.m. or whatever it's going to be. They're going to do what they want to do no matter what time of day it is. So why would you not want something to protect yourself and have that equalizer in your hand is what it is. I feel like this woman is definitely the epitome of Democrat voter base in this country, honestly, dude, 100% across the board. Like, she is the greatest example of why people like Kathy Hochul and AOC and these other moron Democrats are in power right now is what it is, dude. So. Just realized that my thing was not all the way up there, so let me go ahead and readjust my levels here.
The island late at night with a gun.
Hang on, real quick. I just want to make sure that I get this right. Over to the gal. I'm sorry. In the near the center. I can't remember your name. Far into the table on the far right. One of the Christian two.
Oh.
Not. Yeah, you. Yes. I'm sorry. What's your name again?
Oh, yes. Cheyenne.
Cheyenne. Okay. So I just want to make sure that I have this right, but I just got a clip sent over to me that at roughly 52 minutes in, this is what I'm hearing it anyway. When you were asked if you were celibate, you said yes since last night?
Oh, no. Last May.
Not last night.
Right. No.
Okay. I was just making sure.
Okay, they're still talking about guns. Are they going to a different topic? That's my question.
So anyway, yeah. Back to this.
Oh Jesus, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. What the fuck?
So most of you gals, you would say that since this is an
Lord.
equalizer, a force equalizer, your preference would be to know how to use one and have one.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it should be.
The only thing is that I heard like an argument that I kind of thought about was that because men are stronger and bigger than us, if we have a weapon, they can always like wrestle it out of us and use it against us.
So, okay, this is the problem I have with what she just said right there. Why are you ever letting them get that close to you, lady? Again, I feel like these chicks have never heard of the 21-foot rule, which, by the way, is actually police lingo, is law enforcement lingo in this country, which is basically the whole, and like I said before, that knife thing is what it is. Whenever you hear a cop in one of these different, situations where they're against some criminal with a knife, whatever the case be, you'll always hear them scream like 21 feet, something like that's what it is. And it's because if you allow someone within 21 feet of you that has like a knife or whatever, or something similar for that matter, like some kind of stabbing instrument is what it is, then they could actually bridge that gap of 21 feet into your space and be able to stab you or try to shank you or whatever the case be with that weapon. Versus if you're at least 21 feet away from them or more, you can actually be able to get a shot off very easily. And that's the problem. Like, why are you ever letting them within like a couple feet of you if you're armed? That's just stupid, man. That's just dumb. And again, I feel like, unfortunately, it's willful ignorance here is what it is, dude. It's people that don't know any better. And so they're going with some old, out-of-date trope is what it is. When in most cases, it's all BS, dude, at this point. It's all been debunked stuff is what it is for the most part. So, anyway.
But that doesn't really deter me from wanting to have one, just to
Well, should it?
Trained. And for that purpose, I actually started training like BJJ.
Jesus.
Yeah, so... just
that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Why would you think that if a guy could wrestle a gun away from you, which is about the deadliest object you can have, that he's not going to have a massive advantage over you if you know Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
Yeah,
because if you know anything about
silly.
The sport, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a great way to maneuver bigger weights. It's not.
Yeah, have you also seen how many men with no training go up against women who have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu training and still overpower them?
Yeah,
easily?
beat the fuck out of you.
In my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class, like one of her friends, she's a purple belt, and she was attacked by 2 people, and she broke all their legs, and it was like on the news. So
yeah, that never happened.
You can say
but
that
assuming.
it's stupid.
Oh my god, that was the best fucking answer ever, dude. So she broke all that. Well, yeah, that never happened. Yeah, that's funny as fuck, dude. I agree with Andrew on that one, though. I guarantee that shit never happened, bro. Yeah, it's just some chick saying that to you to make you feel better. No. What happened is that girl probably got both of her legs broken, is my guess, honestly, on that one. When some dude just overpowered her and was like, crunch. So, anyway. But anyway, going back to this, though.
It never happened. Your friend was not.
Yeah, Madison's just sort of laughing about it.
Their legs. That's absurd. Okay, what is it called? I'll look it up right now.
You can look it up. Like
I'm gonna look it up. What's it called?
Yeah, tell them what it is.
4'11" girl.
Your 4'11" or 4'11" girlfriend did not break a bunch of men's legs when she was
wasn't
attacked
11
with
though.
Brazilian
She was 4
Jiu-Jitsu.
foot.
That's insane. I want to see the proof.
There's a video. I don't know what I walked back in on, but that sounded ridiculous.
Yeah, because it is ridiculous.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Stuff that never happened for 500.
Yeah, I got that never happened for 1,000. Literally. What's the video called?
It's not a video. It was on the news, and that was something that my classmate had said, and that was her like close friend. So
sure it was.
Okay, so it was a friend of a friend of yours said that it was on the news. Did you actually see it yourself on the news? If I can continue what I'm saying, you can also but hang on. You can. But did you yourself actually see it on the news?
No.
Highly doubtful.
No. Okay, so this is so a friend of a friend told you this.
Yes, and if you look up any YouTube video of real life Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fights, they're there for you to. You can look it up right now.
I can.
It's not the most effective, but I mean.
Wait, Andrew? I got something.
Actually, this is a fun. I'm just going to stop. I think this is where we're going to end off this whole thing anyway. But yeah. So the entire point is, though, and we've talked about this before as well on one of Honda's chats in the past. We were discussing various martial arts and stuff like that. And he was even mentioning about getting into a fist fight with some dude who was like a pretty decent level Taekwondo belt, if I'm not mistaken, and was able to just like punch this dude in the face and knock his ass out cold. So the thing is, like, this is the problem, though, right? Like, martial arts are cool and everything, dude. But at the end of the day, yeah, they're not really useful, dude. It's the same. It's like the same exact thing with that moron Detroit Urban Survival Tactics, man. All you're going to do if you listen to this dipshit is become fucking dust, dude. Hell, there's fucking memes out there with this guy in it now. That dude from Detroit Workers Around Taxes, what it is there, who literally shows people who are trying to disarm people using his tactics going up to heaven, and then him joining them in heaven because he's also been killed from his own stupidity is what it is, man. Like, do not listen to these people, man. They will get you killed. Your best advantage in this country in 2024 right now is to be armed, have at least some amount of training in that for firearms knowledge, to know how to use your gun, to know how to clean your gun, to know how to, keep your gun in working order, and to be ready for what is coming. And I'm not just sitting there talking about, hey, go to the range once or twice, have, 50, 100 rounds of ammo with you. No, I'm talking about legitimately, dude. Have a bunch of ammo, have a bunch of magazines. In fact, I would say have multiple guns for that matter. Not just a handgun, but your long gun. Because the thing about handguns is, man, handguns are well and everything like that. They're effective, obviously, as long as you can use them effectively and stuff. But the fact of the matter is, your handgun should always be used, always, to get to your rifle. Because your rifle is your primary tool for longer ranges, for longer distances. It's much more effective. It's easier to fire. It's easier to do target acquisition, especially if you're talking about you versus a mob of criminals. There's that great video from a couple years ago when that guy was running for office in the U.S. Congress. I forget what state it was in, honestly. It was probably like Alabama or something. And it was this young black guy. Not like, I guess he wasn't technically young. He was probably like 40-ish, give or take, mid-40s maybe. And he's basically just talking about Democrat Party and stuff like that. And the video is literally a bunch of people dressed as Klansmen coming onto his property with fucking torches and their hoods and everything else like that. That's what it is, man. And trying to do him harm. And he pulls out a fucking AR-15 and just goes out there and is like, nope. And yeah, they run scared is what it is, man. And that's the thing. When you have an equalizer, when you have that equal force or greater force for that matter, when you meet force with force and you can deal with that situation like that, you are better off than anybody else. Because at the end of the day, if people mean to do you harm, and the only thing that you have against them is, oh, I have some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or I have some karate, or some Taekwondo training, whatever the case be is there, that's not going to do much of anything, dude. Like, yeah, maybe you can get a kick or two off, but at the end of the day, man, you know what most people are going to do? They're going to pull fucking weapons on you. Good luck fucking kicking a gun out of their hand and stuff like that, dude, without getting shot. Good luck fucking disarming them with that knife in their hand before you get fucking stabbed, etc. Again, you're much better off being armed yourself. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have both lethal and non-lethal. You could easily have, a handgun someplace, and you could have a friggin' little bottle of like mace or OC spray or something like that's what it is, dude. Or even a stun gun for that matter. Because sometimes you can get within that reach where you're just like, zzz, kind of shit is what it is there, man. But like the whole point of that even is, though, unfortunately, a lot of those stun guns only do like a certain amount of damage, dude. They only give off a certain amount of voltage, which some cases is not going to be enough to incapacitate someone, is what it is there. The only thing that incapacitates that person would be an actual firearm being used against them, is what it is, to end that threat to your life. And it's as simple as that, really. So, just to be clear in this whole episode tonight, everything that was shown there is all fair use, and we were breaking it down in such a way to discuss what was being discussed there and to essentially do a breakdown of a back and forth between people on there. Do not try to channel strike us YouTube because we will fight it. People, whatever podcast, Brian, etc. We are using your stuff in nefarious capacity, bro. Simple as that. Don't try to come after us is what it is then. Because I've seen other people use your shit before in various videos and streams and stuff like that. They've done themselves, dude. So, and the entire point is, I like your content, dude. I'd love to be part of your panel at some point, personally. If nothing else, having me on there is you're like 2A guy at one point in time in the history, then, man. Because I'm not the best person for the Second Amendment, but I have enough knowledge behind me, dude, that I could definitely be at least somewhat knowledgeable to people who are not gun people, so it is then. Now, granted, I'm not as good as some people who've been in this, who have been gunners for like 20, 30, 40 years now is what it is. But yeah, like I'm definitely one of those people that, I'm learning every day is what it is. I think a lot of us are for that matter, dude. It's like everybody says before, you learn at least one or two things new every day is what it is. And sometimes that can be Second Amendment related stuff, and that can be something else for that matter. Hell, I learned last night, actually, the final version of the assault weapons ban in 1994 that passed in this country. The primary sponsors of that were at that time, then congressional rep or, Congressman Chuck Schumer, and then that guy that did the Hughes Amendment, it was William Hughes. It was those two guys that were behind that whole thing. Ironically enough, Schumer's still in power to this day in the U.S. Senate now is what it is. That Hughes guy, I believe, was one of the first people that got voted out of office after that then, dude, because of the AWB of 1994 is what it was. Actually, it's kind of funny when you look at the people that were around during that time. It was basically Schumer, Pelosi, Waters, Feinstein, and I think maybe 2 or 3 other Democrats like Marcy Kaptur, et cetera, there, that I'm pretty sure voted yes on the whole thing, that never got voted out of office after that because of where they were at in these blue states and stuff like that, or in these blue areas of red states is what it was then, in Kaptur's case there. But yet, everybody else that was Democrats at that point, between 94 and around 2000 to 2002, someplace in there, all got voted out of office in the 3 to 4 election cycles after that whole thing passed then, because people were pissed, and rightfully so. Because they had all these people that voted yes on that crap had no legal authority, had no legal right to restrict our constitutional rights in this country to buy whatever we wanted for a decade of our lives. So, and they should all be in prison to this day for that whole thing, dude. For deprivation of law is what it is. So, anyway, that being said, I think that's about where we're at for today. I will be back at some point in the future. Probably most likely on this coming Thursday. We Buckshot Thursday. I don't know if I'll do any other streams between now and then. It'll probably just be Buckshot Thursday and then Freedom Friday again, and then most likely Stand Your Ground Saturday after that. Then I know I have a few hours left on this account right now until we hit 20. And I think those will probably cover, I think we'll have enough time on there to cover those 2 streams anyway for Thursday and Friday. And then most likely I'll flip over to a different account then for Saturday. Stand Your Ground Saturday is what it is then. Which, if we continue to do that, though, I think the time period for our Stand Your Ground Saturday episodes now will actually be around 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time then. So it should be 2 o'clock California time, 3 o'clock Mountain Time, and then 4 o'clock Texas time. So, act accordingly on that one. So, anyway, if you would want to be part of that, that's the time I'm going to do this stuff, dude, because I'm not going to go 8 o'clock my time when it's 4 or 5 o'clock your time then, because unfortunately for me, it's nah, man, it don't work that way. And my brain is not working too good when it comes to stuff like that, then when it's later on then. And plus the fact of the matter is when it would become 8 o'clock, whatever, then my time, it would actually be interfering with other people's streams at the time then. So I know Honda said he's not going to be around on Sunday either, for that matter, because I guess he's taking the kids up to a trip to the mountains or whatever then. They're in Colorado, which is cool, doing his fatherly duties and stuff like that. So most likely we will do something on this channel during that for a takeover chat for an hour or so, give or take. Not sure exactly what it'll be now. Maybe it'll be another Tadpoolers chat or something like that. Who knows? But I don't know, man. We'll see. Obviously, I only have 6 slots on the panel is what it is then, because I'm not going to pay for the other 4 is what it is. I don't have the money to do that, unfortunately. What I will do, though, is I will actually work on some stuff here. And if nothing else, we just have a bunch of people come together for that Sunday chat. It might just be people get knocked in and out of the thing that aren't talking at the time or whatever the case be. And I might just knock myself in and out of the chat for a couple minutes or something like that. So, anyway. But, yeah, needless to say, it'll be what it is, man. We might just have to do some shifting around and stuff like that. But other than that, though, that's where we're at for the day. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Like I said, this is all fair use, YouTube. Don't even attempt to try to strike the channel for that whole shit, dude, because it's all fair use stuff. To Brian, whatever podcast, love your content, bro. Keep up the great work. Keep bringing us these things we could actually use to discuss these whole situations like that, man. Because I feel like more and more people need to understand this, dude. More and more people out there need to understand that, yes, you have the right to self-defense. Yes, you have the right to protect yourself with whatever means necessary. And you should want the most equalizing item out there, and that item happens to be a firearm in almost every case. And it's as simple as that, really. So anyway, as we always like to say to end these off, stay safe, stay vigilant, always be carrying. Make sure that you are always armed against any kind of tyrannical or criminal threat that is coming at you, because you never know what's coming down the pipeline. It's better to be armed and ready and not need it than to need it and not have it and put yourself in a situation where you potentially could be in a very, very bad situation, have a very, very bad day is what it is, because you're not ready for what is to come. And what is to come, unfortunately, in this country is most likely the fall of a constitutional republic by the powers that should not be. And if that means we're going to go into another civil war in this country, if that means we're going to do another revolution in this country, if that means we're going to have a 10-year war of attrition and tribalistic warfare between ourselves and other people in here that don't belong in our country, a bunch of legal invaders, etc. there, that might be what it means, honestly. So it's best to be prepared and ready for everything and anything possible, and not have to deal with this kind of stuff, and be able to do what needs to be done to protect yourself and your family from any external threat. And it's as simple as that. Have a good one, y'all. Later.